welcome back to my channel where we are all about love, positivity, self-development, being a girl boss, and everything in that vicinity. In today's video, we are doing another Sunday story time. And in the story time, I'm going to be talking about how my best friend, somebody who I was super duper close to, super into, in love with basically, became somebody who is now a stranger. I'm not friends with them, and I probably would never want to be friends with them ever again. I'm going to explain basically how it became so ridiculously toxic, how that relationship actually ended up being severed. Backstory, this is the same person who I was in a relationship with. I did a story time about him before where he cheated on me with a guy. This video will have nothing to do with that. It will have nothing to do with me and his relationship part of our lives. It will have everything to do with how I ended up not being friends with him anymore after we had already broken up and we had a friendship ongoing. If you're new to the channel, go ahead and subscribe and turn on your notification bell so you do not miss future Sunday story times. I love Sunday story times. You guys love Sunday story times. And if I don't have time for a story time, you'll probably get a really funny, goofy vlog. And also girl boss entrepreneurship tips and things like that the rest of the week. If you are not new to this channel, then welcome back. Thank you for loving me as much as I love you. And without further ado, let's get into the video. I really don't even know how to tell this story exactly, but basically we were very, very close. Like I said, we were in a relationship, and even when we broke up, we talked every single day from start of the day to the end of the day. And he was in a kind of negative situation. Once he graduated high school, he didn't go to traditional high school. When he left the hometown where we were both living in, he moved back to Florida. And when he lived there, he went from going to school to being homeschooled. I don't remember what the reason was, but something happened. He needed to be homeschooled. So he didn't graduate on time, which wasn't really his fault. It was just, computer stuff. I think it was a transition and messed up his credits when he transferred to homeschool. But after he graduated high school, me and him started to kind of be different in the way where I was trying to grow and I was trying to do bigger and better things, and he talked about growing and he talked about doing bigger and better things, but the action was never there and his mindset sucked. So the situation was, he was grown, he didn't go off to college, and he didn't keep a job for longer than a few months. And every time he would get a job, he would just quit it because it was too hard, or it was frustrating, or something bad would happen, or he didn't like his boss, or there was drama. There was always some reason. He wanted to be a dancer. And I used to encourage it. I was like, yo, get your dance on, da-da-da-da. But he never promoted any dance videos. I really hope that he does not watch these videos, because I really feel like if he does, it's going to be some foolishness. I feel like it's not 100% his fault. I feel like he really just needed to get away from his environment, aka his mother and his grandparents. When they moved to Florida, he lived with his mom, who lived with her parents, and they did like this whole, she was just supposed to be there temporarily till she got a job, but they never moved out. And I think even to this day, they're still there. I don't really know 100% because I haven't talked to him in over a year, but a year ago, they had been there for like 5 or 6 years. So, or 4 or 5 years. Me and him would talk about, us moving in together, doing the roommate situation. We would talk about going to California, because anybody who knows me knows that my big goal is to be living in California, living la vida loca. And he wanted to do the same thing. He wanted to be a dancer. He wanted to get in production. He wanted to get into all these big things, but he never made moves towards it. We get to the point where I would be like, oh yeah, I'm doing this. And I would start to tell him like how I am doing well with something, or how I'm progressing, or how I'm starting to do this, that, or the other. And he would be like, oh, that's great. And then he would proceed to talk about how he wished that he would be able to do something and get some of his dreams together. And I was just like, well, why don't you do something? The problem is that he blamed life, he blamed other people. He swore up and down nobody wanted to help him. Him and his mom did this. They swore up and down nobody wanted to help them, even though people offered to help them and they would turn it down. They would swear up and down that life is out to get them, but then they were not proactive in creating their dreams. If it did not fall in their laps, or if it didn't seem easy, they did not go for it. And I didn't realize any of this at first. Like, all of this was stuff that he was doing around me that was impacting who I was, because I cared about him so much that talking to him would impact my entire energy. The current guy that I'm dating now told me this. He said, you could talk to him and you'll be in the best mood, and then after your conversation with him, your entire energy changes and you are like drained of your positivity. That was a really hard pill for me to swallow, because of how much I loved this guy. Like, not even romantically at this point, but I just loved him so much. Like, I thought so much of him, and I really thought that was like a friendship that would never ever end. I started to get frustrated with my friendship with him, and I started to see the toxicness of the relationship when I moved to Florida for a little while and me and him hung out. Now before then, him and his mom would tell me how verbally abusive his grandparents are, or how horrible they are to him, and how they treat him like this, that, and the other, and I would be like, okay, you know, like, that's horrible. I felt really bad for them. I thought they were in a really toxic, terrible situation. And then I went there and I saw, like, I never, like, actually saw the grandparents come at them. So I'm sure there's stuff that I didn't see, but I did see things they did to lead up to their grandparents getting into arguments. And he called me one time to tell me about an argument that they got into, and to tell me about a time when they were upset, and he was telling me the reason. And I remember thinking, like, y'all are mad disrespectful. Like, maybe I'm tripping. Like, I don't know if you should tell me this, but like, this is a grown woman and a grown man living with these elderly people. The main issues is them not cleaning up after themselves. They don't pay any bills. They're not keeping jobs, either one of them. They get mad if they're like telling other people that, you know, I guess, you know, the grandparents were gossipers or something like that. But like, the main issue is like the grandfather or whatever will be like, you need to clean up your room, you need to do this. And I distinctly remember him being like, you want to clean so bad, why don't you clean it? And I'm sitting there thinking, like, you're living in his house rent free, like, clean your room. like, you know, like, I'm just like, why are you arguing about that? Like, why is that something for you to get upset about? Like, the grandparents, I feel like if you're living in somebody else's house, then you kind of have to abide by their rules and what they're comfortable with, especially in this type of situation when you're not like contributing heavily, hardly at all. I feel like, you know, it wasn't like you were renting a room and you paying up your weight. That wasn't the situation. So in my mind, I'm just like, that doesn't make any sense. But even then, I was just like, okay, they're just, you know, they're going through. I started to realize that the reasons why him and his mom were not where they wanted to be was because of their own actions, and because they were not doing anything. They spent way too much time complaining, blaming the world, sitting in their house, smoking weed, sleeping, and playing video games. That was literally what his days always consisted of. So I'm just like, I said, no wonder your dreams are not coming true. You're not doing anything to make them come true. Dancing in your living room does not constitute success for dancing. You have to do more than that. You have to be consistent. There's so much more that comes to it. So, but if I were to say something, I would always say respectfully, I would just let him know, like, you probably need to do this, you probably need to do that. He would get offended and be like, people just don't understand. And, you know, it was always a self-victimizing thing. And I would try to help him. I would try to encourage him. I would try to be there for him, listen to his complaints, yada, yada, yada. But it was always so extremely draining. It got to the point where I was just like, okay, I'm going to take a step back from this friendship. I didn't stop being friends with him. I took a step back. I didn't talk to him as much. We have another friend, a mutual friend that we were both cool with, and they would get into it because he was not communicative. Like, he would just drop off the face of the earth, not talk to anybody, whatever. And I'm pretty sure that all he was doing was sleeping, playing video games, get depressed, not feel like talking to nobody. But I do feel like him and his mother suffer from depression. But it was more like, I don't know, it's like I want to be sympathetic for their situation, but also I feel like their situation is very self-caused. But anyway, so, you know, they would get into it, and I would kind of tease him and be like, yeah, you don't talk to nobody. But I wasn't being serious because I really didn't care. Fast forward to when I moved to Alabama. I was already kind of distancing myself from that friendship. I was feeling some type of way about it. I was really trying to figure out how I was going to actually sever myself from him because of how much I cared about him. Like, there was some strong strings attached. But then a few situations happened that were like eye-openers for me. The first one being that he called me, and we got into it a little bit about this. He called me telling me how his grandparents don't love them, his grandparents doesn't care about them, yada, yada, yada. This is why. Because their car got repossessed. They were immediately about to get another car. But I don't think either of them were working. But regardless, they were about to get another car, and the grandparents didn't want to co-sign. And they were like, you don't love us, you don't care about us, yada, yada, yada. And in my mind, I'm like, you guys are some serious... Like, I remember when he first told me that, I was like, you guys sound like a bunch of freaking brats. Like, you guys are, both of y'all, you and your mom. And whenever I would, like, tell him about, like, how a lot of the stuff he's getting is coming from his mom. And I loved his mom, too. But there was just negative, toxic mindsets there. I don't think that they're bad people, but their mindsets were so self-victimizing and... it was just unproductive, unmotivated, just trash, self-loathing mindsets that were just so toxic. And I would try to tell him that. When he told me that, I was like, you guys sound like brats. What grown person is going to co-sign, whether you're my child or not? You just got your car repossessed, like just now. Why would I put my credit on the line for you to get another car that you cannot afford to keep? Right now, you need to put yourself in a situation where you can afford to get your own car. That's what you need to be doing. Don't be trying to have me co-sign just because I'm your parent or I'm your grandparent or we're related. That does not mean that I am responsible to make sure that you have a vehicle. You are grown. In certain situations, I would have understood. But in this situation, when you just got your car repossessed and like a few days later, you want them to co-sign for another car? What? Like, that doesn't even make, like, why would you even ask somebody to do that? You just got your car repossessed. Like, they're not trying to mess up their credit, trying to help you. Like, that just doesn't make any sense. Like, they're responsible too if you don't pay the bill on the car. That's like the whole thing. And so I understood why they would not, you live in a house, you're not paying your own bills, but you want them to co-sign for your car too. Like, you're basically, I felt like they basically wanted to be taken care of. And I know they did, actually, because I remember him telling me how there was another person who was always in his life and was always trying to take care of him and how much he liked the sound of that. And I was like, you a whole grown man wanting somebody to take care of you. When are you going to learn how to take care of yourself? When? It got to the point when I was starting to start my entrepreneurship journey, that's when all of this was going on. Like, all of this was happening when I was starting to really come into my own and really knowing what I wanted to do with my life. And I'm really moving. I'm doing things. I had started my YouTube channel. My blog was already up and running. I had gotten brand deals, like affiliate deals and stuff like that, and I had companies reaching out to me already. I'm trying to make moves and I'm trying to go forward, but then I would talk to him and it would be like a super duper draining conversation where he would just complain and whine. Then I told him that he needed to move away from his mom, and he was like, well, she's gonna be left alone in that house. I said, maybe if you leave, she'll get some motivation in herself and leave too, so y'all can become independent individuals. But didn't nobody want to listen to me. So I was like, now, mind you, I feel like this was the grandparents' fault too, because I do feel like even though they probably were like mean to them, I feel like maybe they were trying to make them uncomfortable so they'd leave. Or I feel like the grandparents were enabling them, because I wouldn't have no grown person and their grown child living in my house rent free, not working, not paying no bills, not doing nothing but complaining about this, that, and the other, smoking weed, all that foolishness. None of that would have been going on. And I feel like that enables them. You need to force them to get it together. I would hope that their grandparents would actually stick to their word and actually kick them out, because I felt like that would have been enough motivation to where you either move it, get your grind on, or be homeless. And maybe that would get them to, you know, do something. But that never happened. So we got into it about that, and then not long after that, him and the other friend got into it, and about him not talking to her, texting her back, or calling her back, you know, like, and it'd be different, you know, like when we're entrepreneurs and we're all busy, that's one thing, but he wasn't busy. That's where it became from, like, that's why she would get frustrated, because she knew he wasn't doing anything. He didn't have a job. He wasn't in school. He literally slept all day. And so it was just being ignored. So, like, she would get irritated. And I understood her irritation. I wasn't really irritated. But when I saw him post something about communication or something along the lines, I replied. And I was saying that, like, I was teasing him. I was like, yeah, if you talk to somebody, something, 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 or something like that. I was just playing because I knew she was mad, and I'm like joking around, whatever. He's like, oh, you guys are ganging up on me again. And he said that because beforehand, we both had the same issue with him, and we both told him about it. I don't know why they're ganging up on you. We're both your friends. We're both having the same similar issue. If you're hearing the same thing a bunch of times from multiple people, maybe you should take some consideration. Like, maybe there's some truth to it, and you could at least explain your side or something. But that's neither here nor there. But then I was just playing. Like, at that point, I was so busy with my life, I really didn't care about him as much. So I was like, when he said that, I was like, ain't nobody ganging up on you. I'm just telling you. I was like, what are you talking about? And then he got an attitude. Like, he literally went off on us, bro. Like, he snapped at me. He said all this stuff. And then out of nowhere, he was like, you don't care about me. You care about your boyfriend, right? And I remember, and it made me realize that a lot of times when me and him had conversation and we were talking, he would throw shade at my relationship, which made me feel like there was some underlying issues about the fact that me and him had history. And he told me once that he couldn't be friends with me. Like, for a while, we weren't talking because he told me he couldn't be friends with me because he was still in love with me and he wanted to, and I was with somebody else. But I was with somebody else, and the guy that I'm with now, like, that's baby. So that's bad. So, like, you know, I was like, well, I guess we're gonna have to not talk for a while. But, like, when he said that, I was just kind of like, what? Where did that even come from? That has nothing to do with what we're talking about. I said, second of all, you're mad. I was like, I'm not even mad. I was kidding. Like, you just took this and blew it into something else. And then I realized I'm sitting there arguing with him, going back and forth, yelling back and forth with him. Like, I'm getting irritated, and I'm just like, this dude it's still draining me of my energy years later. And I have too much going on in my life that I'm trying to work towards, and I'm trying to make a success, to be worrying about this joker. Like, he is so not relevant to my life anymore. At this point, I am literally holding on to those strings for dear life, and I needed to let them go. So I told him, I was like, I am done with you. You are not he was just not worth the trouble. And he wasn't going anywhere in his life. That was really what the basis of it was. That was the reason why I decided to stop being friends with him. He stopped being friends with the other girl for a while, and they became friends again, and that's fine. But I was like, yeah, I was super dead. I kept him blocked. I didn't want to say anything else to him. I didn't want anything to do with him. I unfollowed him on everything. I don't even know if I may have blocked him on everything. I really don't remember. But I was like, at this point, you're not even trying. Like, you and your mom have been talking about doing this, that, and the other for years. Talking to me, but I've tried to help. I've literally given you tips, ideas. I offered to move to California with them if they would just leave that house. Like, do something yourself, by yourself, for yourself. But they couldn't even do that. So, like, it got to the point where I realized, like, he's not going to change. He was still at the same maturity level, the same place in his life as he was when he was 16. He never got anything going. There was no accomplishment from 16 to 21. Nothing changed in his life. And I'm just like, it's one thing for like 16, 18, 19, you trying to figure stuff out. But once you you a grown man, and you're not even wanting to be independent and take care of yourself, or he always said that's what he wanted, but he didn't want it enough to actually go do it. I had to realize that, like, this was a toxic relationship. Every time I talked to him, or if I tried to help him or encourage him, he turned it around and made himself a victim. He turned around and made it negative. He turned it around and made me the bad guy, or I'm somebody who doesn't understand. If I joke with him, he was offended. If I'm sharing my goals and my happiness and things that are going, he would be like, oh yeah, happy, good for you. But you could tell there was no genuine energy in it. Like, it was just sad. Like, it's sad. And to this day, like, I really feel bad for him. I pray and I hope that him and his mom, they got out of that house. They got out of that situation. They started doing for themselves. I hope that they got jobs and kept them. And he was like my best friend in the whole world. Somebody who I thought that I would never. We used to say to each other all the time, like, oh no, this friendship is forever. So whoever either of us dates will have to just accept it. Like, that's the conversations that we used to have. But in actuality, I ended up having to force myself to never speak to him again. There were times when I missed him like a week later, and I wanted to talk to him, try to hash it out, but then I had to tell myself, like, you're going places, you have things that you're trying to do, and all he's gonna do is upset you, ruin your good energy, ruin your positive mindset. Even though it hurt, like, letting that friendship go in the beginning, it was actually the biggest, like, the best thing I've ever done for myself. In all honesty, all he was negative energy. That whole, him, his mom, all of it, negative energy. All the self-victimizing, the world is against me, why doesn't God love me, why doesn't God make me successful, faith without work is dead, all of that whining, all of the lack of grind, the lack of work ethic. Oh my God, like, now it's amazing because then I put up with it and I dealt with it and I let it drain my energy. Now I can't even imagine myself getting back into a situation where I'm friends with anybody who thinks that way, who moves that way, who complains that way. I can't take it. Like, I genuinely can't. It grinds my gears. That was like a lesson learned for me. And once I shed him from my life, I was so much happier. I felt much lighter. I had less drama. I had nobody to argue with. I don't argue with nobody. Literally. I don't argue with anyone ever. I don't ever have beef within my friendship circle. None of that. Like, nobody who I talk to on a regular basis do I end up arguing with or going back and forth with ever. Most refreshing change. And I was just like, yo, why didn't I do this sooner? Like, my business became more successful. Like, I got my first client like maybe a month after me and him stopped being friends. Like, I mean, like, literally, y'all, like, so much in my life got so much better. And it really showed me how powerful and how self-sabotaging it is having those toxic friendships in your life. It's like having a big weight on your shoulders, and you need to let it go. Even if it's painful, even if the weight is like connected to your skin, you gotta peel it, rip it off, and move forward, because your life, your energy, your environment, the way you feel, it just gets so much better. It gets so much more relaxing. It gets so relieving. Like, I I'm running out of storage, so that's the end of that video, and hopefully you guys enjoyed. Leave a comment in the comment section down below. Give me your opinions. If you've had any situations like this, then share those with me down below. If you're not following me on social media, go ahead and follow all my social medias at Cherishing Flow. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you next week at Sunday Storytime. And yeah, if you haven't subscribed, subscribe. See you in the next video.